Dave, did a song ever provoke a story from you?
Funny you should ask. I'm too cheap to get new copies. I'll find. Oh, here we go. As I was saying, I wrote that song, Clan Girl, first, and then I wrote the story. And I did it because there was just so much there. Again, like I'm just so in love with imagery, and it just knocks me out. And so this is the story. Clan Girl. Sissy Ann Campbell was red on the neck and clamped smack to the bone. Man, Sissy was hot. I met her 3 days out of Vandy, the prison farm out to college. I was released straight up. My rebel ways cobbled the trouble road through the wilds of the Illinois correctional system, and I did every damn day of my 7 months. But it worked out. When they freed me, I was free. Didn't have no appeal to report to, or some curfew loitering at the end of my day, and I sure didn't have to worry about being ambushed by a surprise drug test. Probably best that way. I have authority issues, and in time, a reincarceration initiated by an inevitable parole violation would have been my fate, no doubt. The original plan for my housing had to be amended. I was supposed to stay with my mom. She had a clean double wide. But then she came down with the cancer, and my sister needed to move in to help out. Me and Cammie, my sister, we don't get along, so staying in the double wide was not in the cards. Out of desperation, I moved in with my cousin Cicero over in B-Town. He lived with his grandma, a stout woman by the name of Good Christian O'Keefe. Good, or GC, the church folks slurred the initials together so it sounded like a proper name. She made me up the bed on a screened-in porch. I mean, it was all right, better than sleeping in a ditch, but there wasn't no air conditioning, and the Central South was being hammered by a heat wave. I bought a box fan for $17, spent the first few days of my freedom reading old sci-fi and drinking Dr. Pepper. B-Town wasn't much of a place. There were 6 churches scattered evenly over the village's tiny plat, and in the center of it was a forgotten town square filled with boarded up out of business buildings. East of the square was Kirk's, an auto parts store, and going west from there was Rural Route 14. That was the hot spot. Out on the rural route, just about a half a mile from the square, was the Gas and Go, B-Town's only gas station and convenience store. North of that was Ruby's, a broke down, wore out old honky-tonk. Twice a day, stretched my legs, I walked down to the Gas and Go to refill my 64-ounce Super Gulp. It was just past noon when I walked in on that third day. Sissy wasn't back. She had the cooler door swung open, had one foot propped up on a shelf. Take it from a guy who's been behind bars and's put some serious hours in the magazine-inspired self-gratification. The girl was porn star beautiful. Her long tan legs poked out of cutoffs. Her braless, curvy womanhood stretched the fabric of her sleeveless black Slayer band tee. With pouty pink lips, short golden hair, black shades, high cheekbones, she was XXX camera ready. Well, I come around the corner and there she was. Out of politeness, I should have focused in on the drink machine or the bags of jerky that filled the racks to my left, but I couldn't. I couldn't look at anything but her. I froze abruptly, stood awkwardly. I was speechless, hypnotized. Her raw stripper appeal was profoundly undeniable. Breathing became an unnatural act. Seconds were lost in an unaccounted manner. When I came back to myself, I knew much to my embarrassment that she had to have noticed me gawking. We were but 2 feet apart. Still, them black lens sunglasses allowed me the possibility that she hadn't. Another second passed. Her head tilted slightly and she said,
"Take a picture, it'll last longer."
For once in my fucked up life, I was halfway slick. Can I? Ah, smart ass. Shocked 'cause I'm usually not clever at all. She turned her head and looked at me full on.
Can you what?
Take a picture. She snorted, then chuckled.
If my brother's here, he'd have took a shot at you for talking to me like that.
Hell, I've been shot at for less. What's your name? She didn't answer. She just looked away, shaking her head, smiling. The back door of the store opened, just down from where we were, and the skinny clerk walked in. "Anything?" he said. "Get your foot out of the cooler and close the door."
It's hot, Curtis.
She answered him. "It ain't my fault you got no air conditioning.
I'm buying something.
Well, get it up to the register and quit letting all the cold out of my cooler." He said it hard, then glanced around the store. "Where them damn kids of yours?"
They're out in the damn car.
She answered back just as hard, then looked at me.
What in the hell are you looking at?
"Ain't you never seen somebody in love?" She groaned, took her foot out of the cooler and snagged 3 bottles of Mountain Dew off the middle shelf. She let the door snap shut. I hadn't moved an inch.
Do you ever get laid using that line?
I ain't never used it before. She started towards the counter, and I followed her as far as the drink machine, started filling my cup. Curtis rang her up, and she dug in her bag for change.
I don't know you. You're not from here.
She said to me, her nose still poked in her bag. "Nope," I said. "I just got to town. I'm staying with my cousin."
Cicero's jailbird cousin? I heard about you. You're a wild boy.
I ain't all that. She paid for the drinks with a few watered bills and some change.
I'll judge for myself.
"What do you mean by that?" I asked, and I walked to the counter with my soda. "Hey, you want to hang out?" She didn't say nothing. She just looked at me as she backed out of the store, easing the door open with her bottom. "$1.28, Curtis said as I watched her get into an old Buick. A tiny rebel flag flew from the antenna. I spread $2 out on the counter. "Who was that?" I asked him as he made change. "I ain't in the information business," he answered. Over the next few weeks, I'd see Sissy around. I saw her at the Gas and Go. She walked past me a few times in that rusted out 73 Century with the busted headers. Then I saw her at Sam's Club grocery shopping. I was tagging along with Good for something to do. Sissy had 3 kids with her, all little blonde babies, white and pink and dirty as a pack of respectable toddlers could get. As we met in the coffee aisle, I nodded and said, "Hey!" But she seemed close to that friendly gesture, and my greeting floated like a treeless leaf, up and around, and got mixed up in 1,000 other words blown around that store. This was no wound to me. I'd been slighted before. I figured that's just the way it was. But as we made our way past each other, she stopped with kind of a theatrical jerk and stared at me over the top of them black glasses.
You stalking me?
She asked. I was expecting to be ignored. Shoot, a howdy might have floored me, but being accused like that, I couldn't do nothing but blurt out the first word my brain would turn loose. "No!" I squeaked. I sounded a little like a poodle. The corners of her full pink lips rose just a little.
Well, why not?
Damn, right? I mean, that's fucking hot. Don't you guys think that's hot? Well, I thought it was hot. Hot as hell. Ain't no girl ever flirted with me like that before. And I ain't complaining when I tell you, I was hooked. Me and Sissy started getting along good. For the next few days, we was chatting and flirty whenever we bumped into each other, which as often as we could work out. Somewhere in there, we decided to go on a real date. And that Friday evening, walked over to her place. Her white trailer sagged behind her mother's old coal company shack, underneath 2 gigantic catalpas and 1 ancient walnut. As I came up in the yard, a half a dozen dogs, Mixed hounds mostly came tearing out from under the house, barking and baying, their bony tails beating the wind. At the same time, Sissy came bouncing out of her trailer, shooing the dogs and grinning. A drink or two ahead of me, no doubt. She was in a loose, super short, white and green sundress with saggy spaghetti straps. Spaghetti. I'm coining that word. She handed me a plastic yellow cup. "Well, you passed the dog test," she said. The dog test? The cup held a strong mixture of vodka and cherry Kool-Aid. It went down pretty good. "What do you got them trained to sniff out narcs?" "Narcs and niggers," she said. "Do you like my earrings? I made them myself. A tiny noose expertly crafted from brown wax string hung from each ear. I was gonna dangle little nigglets from them too. I measured up a couple of the kids' littlest action figures, but they was too heavy. They made my ears hurt." She laughed like she was talking about unicorns and rainbows. "What the fuck do you say to that?" Yeah, my hair was up. I knew what I should have done. I should have walked my ass right out of that yard. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because just when she said what she said, she put her arms above her head and stretched, arching her back. And oh my sweet Lord, when she did that, that short dress came up. Way, way up. Like many a fool before me, unvarnished lust convinced me to abandon my golden self. Somewhere in me I found a plastic smile and tried to focus on that bliss that would be mine once I took that pornographic goddess into love's embrace. Sissy smiled back at me in such a way that made me feel like she knew exactly what I was thinking. "My mama's watching the babies," she said. "She'll keep them all night." All night? That's good. I commented on her mother's generosities. Sissy propped her hands on her curvy hips. "Oh, so you're just assuming that's an invitation?" She was good at tripping me up, and I stood dumbly. But then she laughed. "My mama always takes the babies on Friday nights." "Oh, your night to how?" "Well," Sissy said, answering, but then from somewhere behind her a rough voice broke in. "Friday's meeting night." I spun to see a tall, broad, shirtless man covered in tattoos. "Jim," Sissy began, "this is my brother Dell." And then to the shirtless man, "Dell, this is my friend James. He's Cicero's cousin." "Hey," I said, nodding. Dell bobbed his head in a wave hello. He stood with his arms crossed, his legs apart, staring at me. "James did time up and..." He interrupted her. "Vandalia, I know." Sissy turned to me with pride. "Dell does his homework." "You're kin to GC, Dell asked, his tone patient but demanding. Sissy answered for me. "Nope, he's a Conklin." Dell was older than Sissy by 15 years. He leaned on the door and tilted his head slowly, focusing on an unturned field east of the trailer. "You Herman Conklin's boy?" "Herman's my dad's younger brother." "So your dad is..." Aldo Conklin." He turned and walked into the shadows of the trailer, and I noticed the handle of the automatic tucked in the back of his camo shorts. "Didn't he hitch up with Mary Beth Eubanks?" Sissy took me by the hand and I answered as we walked up the cinder block steps into the trailer. "Yeah, that's my mom. You know the Eubanks?" "Know 'em enough. That's some good stock, son." Calling me son. That normally would have wrinkled the shit out of me, and I usually don't sit still for no interrogating either. But this cat was 6'4", wide as a Peterbilt, and looked to be just as strong. There was a lot of muscle underneath that detailed layer of prison ink. Besides all that, he had a Glock in his britches, and his sister showed me her underwear. It was an unusual situation, no doubt. Blood will tell. Dell's voice had become reverent and still, like he was reciting a biblical passage. "What do you think about that? Blood will tell," he asked, repeating the phrase. "Sounds logical," I answered, not knowing what else to say. He nodded. "It's an old saying. You can still hear it in forgotten places by those who've been left unspoiled. Blood will tell," he said again with gentle veneration, then tarried on the thought a second too long, smiled at me mechanically like he'd remembered himself. "It's all about the blood, you know." "Yeah," I said, agreeing with him, thinking it was wise. There was nothing in his demeanor that suggested he appreciated debate. "Did you ever go out with a good gun dog?" "Beagles," I answered. "That's a hound." "Oh, okay. A gun dog. I'm talking about a retriever or a pointer." "I guess I haven't." "Well, if you had, you'd seen the power of blood," Dell said, glowing just a bit. "That's right, son. Pointer points. It's instinct. You ain't got to be taught how. That's what it does. Just like the border collie herds. All that knowledge and know-how right in the blood." "Ain't that something?" I said. Sissy leaned over the beige counter. "Jimmy, you ready for another drink?" I really didn't need one, but I was glad to be off the subject of blood. "Okay." I finished what was in my cup and handed it to her. I was going to say something about how Kool-Aid made a pretty good mixer, but Sissy cut me off. "I'm making hot dogs. I never asked you if you liked hot dogs or not." "I like hot dogs. I like the one with cheese inside too. Did you ever have them?" "Yeah, they're good, but I have to consider how they're processed. As a mother, I have to put my kids first." "Being a parent's a full-time job," I said, thinking all along that squirting some Velveeta into a vat wouldn't add or detract from the amount of processing a prepackaged hot dog might be. "Hey," I said, "you want to go to Ruby's later on? They're going to have a band." "There's a meeting tonight," she said. "A meeting?" I asked. She didn't answer. Dell finished a blue ribbon and tossed the can into the garbage. "Ding," I said, "now that's a three-pointer." Dell ignored me too. I know I have the pages here someplace. I just got all this mixed up. Like that's the first time that's ever going to happen. Dell ignored me too. He pulled the Glock out of his britches and wrapped it in a shirt I believed he carried for that purpose. "I'm going to pick up the keg. I'll see you down there." He stepped out and trudged down the steps. Sissy smiled and walked towards the refrigerator. "He likes you." A truck started out on the gravel drive. "How can you tell?" "Oh, I can tell, but you better be nice to me or he'll beat your ass." She laughed. I did too, but I don't know why. Sissy was at the refrigerator putting ice in my yellow cup. "That was in Vandy," she said. "He did 2 years there and 3 in Stateville. I was just little then, just in grade school. I missed him, but he wrote me lots of letters, so it kind of made up for it." "That's too bad," I said. "Oh, on me maybe, but he liked jail. Gave him structure is what he said." She took out the vodka out of the freezer and poured my cup a third full. "Thing is," Dell said, "Thing is, Dell thinks he's my daddy." She opened the lower section of the icebox. "Not literal like. Our daddy died in a wreck when I was 3. I don't hardly remember him, but I've been told he was a Christian and lived like a white man." She paused and looked at me, then started again. "Anyway, since then, Dell being the oldest and me being the youngest and the only girl, he started looking out for me. You know, like a daddy does." She took out a plastic pitcher and filled the rest of my cup with Kool-Aid. "And that's our story." She took a piece of ice out of the freezer, ran it down her throat and across her chest. "I'll be glad when this heat spell breaks." She took out a second piece of ice and ran it across my forehead. "I'm hot," she said. "Are you hot?" She ran the ice down my cheek and neck. I put my arms around her waist and pulled her close. She did not resist, nor did she return my embrace. Her right arm rose, bent at the elbow. Her palm went behind her head. Her left arm curved gracefully downward, slightly backing away. She arched her back and pushed her breast into me and placed her face inches from mine. Our eyes locked. She put her lips lightly to mine and held it for 1 sweet second. The kiss ended. Our lips parted. But she did not pull away. Her face lingered inches from mine, and she whispered, "Your hot dog ain't getting no bun." Embarrassment began to rise. "I'm gonna have to wrap that thing up in Wonder Bread," she whispered. My arms fell away. Sissy, however, did not pull back. She leaned into me harder. "How does that suit you?" "Well, however you want things to go, it suits me just fine," I said, and tried to pull all them loose ends together. "However I want it to go. I like that," she said, and looked at the digital clock on the stove. "The meeting won't get going till 9. I'm going to stop dinner." And that's the end of section 2. In jail, nobody throw my blame, 'cause I killed all my friends last night. It was a bloody affair. The whole trailer court was there when I killed all my friends last night. Know what kind of pills I was taking. Suddenly, the party started shaking. I heard a hiss down the road. I was home 44 when I killed all my friends last night. From Biloxi, they came out and got me. I combed my hair and went without a fight. To be condemned without objection, death for lethal injection. Yes, willingly I slip into the night. And maybe see my friends up yonder, and together we can sit and ponder. And maybe spell a little wine, drink like old times before I killed them all last night. Yes, I killed all my friends last night. Drinks were drunk, food was consumed. In fact, she did use Wonder Bread instead of buns for my hot dog. We talked and flirted, a few times fell into deep, wet kisses that kept us lounging in each other's arms. But more than that, time passed, and at 8:45, Sissy pulled me out of my chair. "Come on," she said, "it's time to get to the meeting." And we took out walking through the field back of her house. It was near dark when we crossed a ridge into a dip in the landscape. A good crowd of people had formed, 200 or so. A ring of bonfires was burning, and jumpy golden flames made everything seem sweet. People saw Sissy and came to greet her. an overly tanned blonde in camel blouse and khaki-colored shorts was the first to reach us. "So, this is the new stud I've been hearing about." "No, stud couldn't make it, so I brought Skinny instead." The girls laughed. I shook my head and stuck out my hand. "Hi, I'm Skinny Jim. What's your name?" Blonde girl looked at my hand. "You don't need to know my name. You haven't spoken before, son." The girls laughed again. Other people came around. A few of the guys had shaved heads, wore old school combat boots. A good group was in camo, and there was a few old guys with beards and fedoras and bib overalls that hung in tight, sweaty groups, rolling their own and drinking what looked to be moonshine. Despite their differences, everyone seemed to be getting along, and everyone was friendly enough to me. I was introduced a dozen times over as we pushed through to the kegs. At 9:30, a shush went across the milling crowd, and everybody faced west. That's when I noticed 5 figures in white robes and pointy clan-style hats standing next to a little knoll. "Sissy," I whispered. She shushed me. One of the robed figures climbed onto the hillock, and he stood there until the crowd's murmuring dissipated. He raised his right hand above his head. In it was a Bible, a white cross on its black cover. He raised, on his other hand, a megaphone with a black cross on it. He raised the bullhorn to his lips.
"Brothers and sisters,
He began.
we are at war."
"Hey, sissy, ain't that Dell?" I whispered again. This time she elbowed me and hissed, "Shh!" Dell continued.
"That's right. We're it."
Blah, blah, blah. My attention started to drift. When people blab, my thoughts float and flip. Seems like anything can snag my attention. Of course, there has to be that other little thing immediately present. Right then, there wasn't much around. I was in a growed-over field. If you'd seen one field, you'd seen them all. I bounced my head to the right. There was a little group of skinheads over that way. One of the guys had a swastika tattooed on the side of his head. He had his arm around a petite skinhead girl. She had a mohawk and a Nazi SS insignia tattooed on the side of her head. She was in loose cutoffs, jack boots, and a t-shirt with a rebel cross on it. It read, "You got your ex, I got mine." She turned her head and looked at me. There was something in her expression, and perhaps I hung on that face a second too long, because the vibe changed, and I noticed that her boyfriend was looking at me, looking at her. For some quick damage control, I put my arm around Sissy and gave him thumbs up. He nodded like we had some kind of understanding and turned his attention back to Dell. The little skinhead girl looked at the boy, glanced at me, and then reconnected to the lecture. There was a sudden burst of applause. Sissy pulled away to get a better view of her brother.
"That's right. We're white. Children of the light."
Dell was crowing high on that megaphone. Suddenly, that little mohawk girl was walked between Sissy and me. She stared as she passed. She had 2 red solo cups in her hands, was heading for the keg. I reached over Sissy's shoulder and took a cup, whispered, "Refill." Mohawk was pumping air into one of the kegs when I came up. "Here," I said, "I'll get that." I took the pump from her and started working it. She kept her eyes on her job as she filled the first cup. On the second, she watched me.
It's near empty. You pump, I'll fill.
"Thanks."
You Sissy's new beau
We came together.
that fell on with?
Yeah.
He's my husband.
So that would make you, Mrs.
You don't mind if I drink out of your cup, do you?
Don't look like you care what I mind.
You mind that I'm married?
What kind of a question is that?
That's the one I wanted to ask. Here's another. You mind that Sissy's married?
Well, she ain't.
She ain't with him now. Her old man's in the joint.
She told me she never married none of her exes.
Well, having kids together makes you pretty damn married.
I don't know about none of that.
Well, you know now. I just told you.
What's it to you, Ann?
Paula and Darnell. Ma, if you-
I don't know who Paul Darnell is.
That's Sissy's two youngest. They're my brother's kids. I'm their aunt.
Well, Ann Mohawk, it was nice talking to you.
My brother's locked up. Them kids is kin. I have to keep an eye out for them, even if Sissy don't.
What's any of that got to do with me?
Well, if you're hanging around with Sissy Ann, you'll be hanging around with babies, too.
We's on a date is all. I ain't moving in. I don't want to be a daddy to no kids that ain't mine.
Boy, that's just what I'm thinking.
Like a well-oiled machine. I walked back to Sissy. Dell was still preaching.
Let us embrace the ways of our forefathers, and let this symbolic light remind us of who we are, and in that keep us strong.
But that said, Dell took a torch from one of the bonfires and lit a cross. Everybody started hooting and hollering. I heard some guns going off. It was like the 4th of July. Half a second after Dell lit the cross, loud black metal music started banging out of these heavy-duty speakers propped up on the cabs of a couple of pickups. When the music started, it was like a button got pushed. The core of the crowd exploded. Everybody started dancing. It was a crazy, violent kind of dance and looked like a damn prison riot. Sissy got whooshed up and pulled right into the middle of it. The girl did not hold back. She was all crashing and slamming and jumping. Looked like she was having a pretty good time. I finished the beer I was drinking and went for another. I decided that the kegs was the best place to meet up with Sissy, and I found a little patch of dirt not far from the well and went to work. I was there maybe 20 minutes when Sissy and Mohawk came out of that dark thrashing mob. Sissy was making a beeline for me. Mohawk was making a beeline for me. Sissy wasn't as sure on her feet, was being helped by her ex-sister in common law. I stepped up to greet him. "How's it going?" I asked. "Fuck off," Sissy slurred at me. "What?" "You heard her. Fuck off," Mohawk said. "That's right. Fuck off, shit fucker." Sissy was drunk and a little cross-eyed. I kind of like that. But I couldn't enjoy it because I was under attack. "What's going on?" I asked, guessed that my conversation with Mohawk was being pounded out of shape, and that she, Mohawk, for the sake of her locked-up brother, was out to sabotage my romantic evening. Sissy's face twisted into an unpleasant scowl. "You think you're too good for my kids?" She held up her right hand and raised her middle finger. "Well, fuck you, Jimmy Conklin." I looked at Sissy. "This is bullshit. I never said nothing like that." I pleaded with her, but there was no crack in that wall of drunken hatred. No place for the light of reason to illuminate her dark mood. Mohawk stood with her hands on her hips, looking victorious, winning the battle I didn't even know we was waging. There wasn't much to say, but I was going to say something. I turned on Mohawk. "Well, how much booze did you pour into her anyway?" Sissy was back on me then. "Don't you be talking to Loretta like that." "You know what? You can back off." I became harder. This really pissed Sissy off, and she screamed now. "Fuck you, Jimmy!" With her screaming like that, the crowd started to form. I don't care how damn sexy Sissy was. There's just so much I'll take, and I was reaching my limit. "Fuck you right back," I countered. "Don't you cuss at her," Mohawk slashed at me. "I'll cuss at any fucking buddy I want." Skinhead Mohawk's husband got into it then. "Hey, cocksucker, that's my old lady." I spun on him. "Get your old lady out of my damn face." Sissy's temper snapped. She charged at me with a series of slaps and overhand punches. I do not hit women. I covered myself as best I could and I started retreating backwards. The ring of people that had formed around our screaming match offered no exit. And when I came to the parameters of our battlefield, I was shoved back into the match. This shove, however, sent me crashing into Sissy. And Sissy, as drunk as she was, wound up on the ground. This did not play well. A long ooh rang from the crowd. I scanned the faces for a glimpse of sympathy. There was none to be had. I was the villain, and Sissy was the angel. The cursing, moaning, drunk and dirty, crawling around on her hands and knees, looking, I'm sure, for a stick or a rock to bash my brains in, angel. From my left, I saw a hasty party of this disapproving audience. I knew what was coming. Dale burst onto the stage. It wasn't a fight, it was a beating. Every blow he delivered was an explosion of agony. I cannot recall the exact events, but I do know I was knocked to the ground and pulled to my feet at least a half a dozen times. And that show ended with a beautifully placed kick to my nuts. Most nut shots end up unsuccessful. The kicker usually misses the target. Dell, however, rang the damn bell. I do not know if I blacked out officially. If there was any more to this beating, you'll have to get it from somebody else. The nut shot was my finale. When I had it in me to move, I got to my feet. I was aching inside and out. Dell had delivered a fine beating. I hurt appropriately. My face got the worst of it. I had a split lip and a good black eye, and a swollen cheek on the other side to even out my misery. My body hurt too, but not as bad. Being young, I still bounced good enough. But my heart, that's where I really suffered. My passion for Sissy had died. And that spot where that passion had burned so brightly was now dark and cold. Sissy would never be mine. That was okay. I wasn't missing her. Sexy as she wasn't special. She was just another redneck girl, same as my sister Cammie, same as 100 girls I knew. Nope. I wasn't missing Sissy at all. I was missing that frenzy of desire. I took a good guess as to where I was and started walking. The night air was hot, but fresh and rejuvenating. The more I walked, the less I felt like getting back to GC's on that porch. Just about a mile of hustling put me on the rural route, and I was happy to be out of the field. But now I faced a choice. On the left was rubies and a chance for adventure. On my right, the gas and go, and sleep, and tomorrow, and nothing. I've been out of jail 11 days. I've jiggled my pocket. I had $26, with no immediate prospects of getting more. Ruby's was a fine old romance. That stink of spilt beer and cigarette smoke. The band looked to be a collection of local farmers that knew a lot of George Jones and Merle Haggard, though Toby Keith or Keith Urban could get squeezed out of them with a good enough tip. I sat near the elbow of the scarred wood bar watching the band, feeling almost good. Halfway through my beer, a shot got plunked in front of me. A blonde woman in camo shirt and khaki shorts took the stool 2 down from where I was. She raised the whiskey to me. Well, son, you took that beating like a full-grown man. She smiled, but not in a taunting way, then added, that Del Campbell's a mean son of a bitch, ain't he? I took the shot and raised it to her. No doubt, I answered, and we threw that drink back together. You ain't the first boy to get knocked around on account of Sissy, she said. And you probably won't be the last. What's that supposed to make me feel better? Well, I got the bartender's attention and bought the next round. And we sipped at these, and the band started playing an old Freddie Fender song. Hey, you want to dance? Yeah, I'll beat the shit, she said. Shoot. A little thumping can't keep the kid down. Come on, I said, holding out my hand. I think she might have been a little embarrassed to dance with a fellow as beat up as me, but she took my hand and followed me out of a dark space in front of the band. We joined a half a dozen couples in the dark and moved to the music. The singer was this old guy, 50 or so, but he was still square from hard work. His shoulders hung off his spine easy and broad, and his hips were narrow, and his hands were thick from gripping hammers and maybe the handles of long shovels. Thick as they were still nimble on the neck of his old guitar, and he played delicately. He played delicately. His face was lined and tanned, and everything about him spoke of coarse labor and cold physical reality. But as his eyes went from couple to couple, I saw in them life and faith and true belief in those abstract things of which he sang. Love and heartache, rambling souls that dashed desperate for freight trains rumbling in the moonlight, of the varied spirits of hard liquor that fingered the lives of the people they swept through. I had no doubt that this man was an acolyte of the songs he sang. I was pleased and lucky to have his blessing and his prayer upon me as I danced with this woman. Me and the blonde danced many more dances, and I spent all my money, and she spent a great deal of hers. At 1:35 a.m., the bar called last call. At 1:55, we got chased out. I walked her to a car, and we kissed, but it was no more than a goodbye, and I started back to GC's. It was still hot, and I took my time, wanting to savor the quiet and the dark. I was halfway around the square when I heard a car. A hot rod maybe, or Sissy's Century roaring on the rural route. I stopped and leaned on a light pole in front of the old bank building. It was built of large gray slabs of stone, with just enough scroll work to make it special. It was the closest thing to grand this little town had ever seen. I wondered about all the people that hustled in and out of that bank, saving it up to procure a heart's desire. I could see them bustling across the old square. Desire, the single tiny flickering flame that guides poor souls through this world of darkness. I laughed at these escapades, wondering what kind of spirit I had conjured in my panic for Sissy. I went on then, done for the night. I could smell the leaves and blossoms stretching and blooming in the darkness, and there were cicadas and crickets singing in the grass, mosquitoes humming and bats swooping around incandescent streetlights. And as beat up as I was, I felt pretty good. The end. Thank you so much.